proportionately.
Yes, yes, that's absolutely right. And the technical term for that is that the warming saturates that as you add more CO2, you use up the easy infrared that you can catch, and you're stuck with trying to get infrared that the molecule isn't really designed to absorb. So at present, CO2 is really absorbing all of the infrared it can in its main absorption band. And as you add more, it's just getting a little more infrared at the edges of this band, and that's not very efficient. And that's why when people say compare CO2 to methane, they say, well, methane is much more potent as a greenhouse gas, but that's only because methane is not yet saturated, so it still has lots of its easy pickings left to pick off, but CO2 has already used it up long ago. So you're quite right. CO2 absorption goes logarithmically as the concentration. If you want to get one other degree of warming, you have to double again. So it's a multiplicative thing, not an additive thing now.
Yeah, if you take a white wall and paint it red, you say, wow, that's a whole lot of red. But if you keep painting it red, you only get a little bit more every time.
That's right. The first coat is the most important.
Right. Now, one thing that sort of struck me when I was looking into these 70-odd, I don't even know what the exact number is, but these 70-odd models of climate change that have been wending their way through the somewhat scientific milieu over the last couple of decades, is that they tend to agree with each other a lot more than they agree with reality. And it sort of struck me like in a court case, if you have 20 people all saying the same bad thing about you, it sounds really bad, unless you find out that they've actually talked it over beforehand and come to a particular arrangement as to what it is that they're going to say. And the only way that I can imagine how these very complex models could agree with each other a lot more than they agree with reality is if there may have been some, I don't know if it's covert or overt, ways of exchanging data or agreeing on parameters to make them look similar enough to be compelling to people who are ignoring the basic empirical data.
Yeah. Well, you're right, and it's kind of an echo chamber. The problem is that the models are not very realistically, and they're not. You have to parameterize them, so they're parameters that you adjust in a model, and there's more than one. There are lots of them. And if you look at all these models, they do what they call tuning. They put the model together, and then they fiddle with these numerical parameters until they get the community accepted answer. So if the community decides the answer is half a degree, they'll tune the model so they'll give a half a degree. Or if it's 2 degrees, they can do that too. They can get any answer you would like. So they're not really predictions. People who think the models are predicting something don't understand really what's happening in the models. So I don't know. There are lots of models like that. For example, models of how nuclear weapons work, what the yield is. They have parameters in them that are adjusted, but at least in this case, you're not permitted to cheat. If the model doesn't work, it's too important, to cover it up. So we've spent a lot of effort in the U.S., I would guess in other countries too, to try and make sure that these codes for nuclear weapons really do work and have the basic physics right.
As far as the global warming goes as well, as you had mentioned, Dr. Happer, that's the water vapor is sort of a key thing, 70%.